Hello, everyone, and welcome to FPH Weekly. It's kind of I'm not in a jovial mood. No one here is in a jovial mood today. Mike Straw, Chris Wassel, Elaine Shercliffe joining us for this fun episode. Jim Biringer might join us. He's having network issues, as always. Someone every week has issues, whether it was me last week or something else. But we have today, we didn't have a show last week. Actually, before we get into it, how are you two doing? I'm already ready to go. This is where I'm at. I'm already ready to go. Like, I was ready to just dive in.
I could use some more sleep. I could use some more sleep, but other than that, I mean, it could be better. It could be it could be worse, but I could definitely be better.
And here he is.
Yo, what's up?
Jim
hi.
Biringer himself
What's going on?
joining us. See, he didn't even miss. He missed a minute of the show. Not even.
Totally
Well,
fine.
not only did I have technical difficulties, but it is the initial college football rankings tonight, so I get heated about that.
Oh, I feel that.
Hail to the old sucky ass Notre Dame. And I can say just because I have to suffer like constantly because they never have a quarterback or never have.
See, that's why you become fans of teams that never have a chance, and you just all you care about is winning the conference. That's all you should care about. So
Yeah, I mean, I
What's
went
a
to
con- what's a
Akron,
conference?
so like, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it.
I went to a division. My school's Division III. I'll take that. Our biggest claim to fame is we shut out Penn State at Penn State in Penn State's first year as a D1 program. So I'm not going to complain on that one. When a Division III school goes down to
pretty good.
Goes down to Happy Valley and gets a shutout. Great times. Makes me very happy. So we have, I don't even know where to begin with this, but we didn't have the show last week because reasons.
He did it.
And it was actually good that we didn't have the show because so much more came out with the Chicago Blackhawks. We found out who John Doe was. We found out more and more disturbing details of what happened to Kyle Beach. We found out what the NHL didn't want to or did do as punishment, which was far less than what they did to the New Jersey Devils for signing Ilya Kovalchuk, which is, I get different circumstances, but that's my point. But that's kind of where my rant sits. And you know, Elaine, I'm just going to start with you because you have been vocal on Twitter. I'm a rain dancer, and throughout this past couple weeks, I mean, we kind of knew everything was hitting the fan. We knew something was going to hit the fan. We were kind of shocked nothing hit the fan in the offseason. No, they wait until the first month of the season, and now it kind of feels dirty to just talk regular hockey. I don't feel like we can talk regular hockey, right?
Right. Like because I cover 4 AHL teams, and I just don't feel like I can do it completely without addressing what's going on in the NHL, because those players, you know, they're on NHL contracts. And like, I mean, I just get frustrated too, because like, what is the AHL doing as well to make sure that these players are safe when they come down and it's a safe space for them? Like, I know a lot of these teams are owned by their NHL counterparts. So like, there's just so many questions that were not answered this week. There were so many things left open-ended and so many things left a bitter taste in my mouth. Like, and it's not been a fun week since I was surprised that I got an invite to attend that briefing. The Blackhawks and Jenner and Block did. I was super surprised. I mean, yeah, I'm on like the Ice Hogs press release list, but like I don't cover them this season, so it was a shock. So I was like, okay, like let's attend it. Let's start covering it because now I have access, you know?
I have a feeling, and I'll get into that too, my thoughts on that. And Chris, we're going to go to you next. I want to go to you next. I have a feeling that when it came to, and this is like, don't take this anyway, I feel like when they're choosing people who to let in for covering these, they want the people they perceive as the nice, good ones.
Yeah, I'm not that.
No, but they might perceive you as that. and they don't want people who are going to come in. And we'll get into one journalist, and the NHL Pro Hockey Writers Association came out with a statement defending him because the NHL clearly not wanting to have him ask the questions he should have been allowed to. But Chris, when Kyle Beach came out as John Doe in this lawsuit, and he told more of his story on TSN in that interview that couldn't have been easy. There's no way it's easy. What was your initial thoughts, or not even initial thoughts? Now that you've had almost a week to kind of digest this and really understand what he said and everything, what are you thinking about what exactly happened? I mean, we've talked about it off air quite a bit, me, you, and Jim. Yeah. But what goes through your head after really getting into the nitty gritty of this?
Literally, one of the first things I said, even in the offseason, when we talked about the Chicago Blackhawks and all their moves and everything else, I said this right off the get-go, that this was going to hit in the first month of the season. Yeah, it just wasn't going to be held back any longer. And look, yeah, I'll say this: Rick Westhead is a saint. He is one of the nicest people you'll ever talk to. He'll give you the time of day. It doesn't matter if you're a 2-bit reporter for whatever, insert small town, paper here. But he always will give you the time of day. He will respectfully debate you on things. I don't think I've ever heard the guy raise his voice unless it's for something that he's really impassioned about. And I'm not going to lie. It hit like a ton of bricks. I played semi-pro hockey. I understand hazing rituals. I've seen things that probably would go under the guise now of assault and borderline sexual assault. But most of us were too young then to really understand what was going on. Now we do, because we're obviously older.
And I hate the term hazing, because to me, it's not. It's way worse. Hazing to me is a very negative word. Like I remember even back in high school, whatever, the seniors, a freshman would make varsity or whatever, and you rib them as far as, we put something, like the one time we put like coloring in his shampoo to color his hair.
Yeah.
But that's it. We weren't doing things like, I don't like what you've seen high school teams do now to students is, it's just hazing. No, it's assault.
Yeah, it's straight up assault. Yeah.
And Jim, now we're gonna continue this roundtable here. You've had time too, and you're seeing this. And when you see Kyle Beach and you see his story, and there's way much more we're gonna talk about, but he is obviously exhibit A. How tough do you think? I mean, it's pretty obvious how tough it was, but how necessary do you think it was for him to actually come out and identify himself to make this even a bigger deal for teams to go and the league to say, or people around the league to say, no, this is really this, we need to change this typical dude bro culture that hockey's had for decades?
I was going to be honest, a little surprised to actually have a name to this thing. I thought maybe it just stayed John Doe forever. But then again, the world we live in, if what happened, obviously it happened. So it's crazy, because it's just to go back to 2010 and that time period, and the kid, everybody says, he should have came out then. Yeah, but realize he was still trying to make the NHL. So, and what he said about, he didn't want to come out because he would have been ousted and all that stuff. To have a name to it makes it more impactful than just John Doe. Thinking about this now, just having a name and having a face and seeing his emotions, and the fact that so many people let this kid down. And remember, he was a kid. Let's realize that he was a kid.
He was a kid with his whole career in front of him.
Exactly, and everybody called him a bust. And you saw those pieces that came out saying he was a bust, not knowing the backstory. Now we know what was going on.
And it's one of those things, like you saw all those people coming out saying articles that was, when you're a hockey writer and you don't know this is going on, those are obviously, like, you feel really dirty now knowing what you know. at the time, there's no way for like you and I, if we were to have written those articles, would I feel terrible if I had written it? Like now, would I feel terrible? Of course I would, knowing what he's gone through. But back then, it's like, I don't like it. It's tough. Like we saw Mark Lazarus. He did a book on the 2010 Blackhawks, and he felt guilty for not being able to find this information out. Like, this extends far beyond those within the organization. There are people who cover it that feel really, really bad about it, knowing like if they would have seen one thing, there's a lot of people that likely would have stepped up and said something. One thing that really it keeps eating at me way more than I think. Can
you put up what Kyle just said? Because that's a really good point. That's a really good point about the healing process. I think he's carried this for so long, and you could see it in his face. And he even said it with his girlfriend. He said that they've carried it for so long, and she stuck with him through this whole process. So you know what? Kudos for him to coming out, because that is part of the healing process, because he's carried this for so long. And I really hope, now, obviously we're going to still talk about it, but let's see if he can move on with, the rest of his life going forward mentally, have him stable. Because, the big thing is, I know I'm going to jump around here because I
think we're all going to.
I know Elaine's got a lot to say because she's covered great work. Her articles have been great on the site. Her tweets have been awesome. But, it's funny, you hear all these players come out and the PA, and they should have done more, and they should still continue to do more, because this kid's mental health is so important. And and that can be said for all leagues. They should be doing more to help these players.
Yeah, and you talked the mental health thing is a big part of it, because we should be lucky and happy that he's still here.
Right. Yes.
Because it is one of those things. There's no doubt over the last 10 years that is, I'm not going to put words in his mouth and say the thought came into his head, but there's a lot of people who that thought has come into their head, who have suffered. So thankful he's still here. He was able to tell his story. And then I think what's bothered me not more than what actually happened to him, is the response from the players who are on that team, like Jonathan Toews. Jonathan Toews' response has eaten at me since he's made it, about trying to bear no responsibility. It's like, dude, you're the team captain, and you were the captain then.
Right.
Like, you are the franchise at that point.
Can I interject here really quick?
Yeah. Go for it.
So, I grew up in the western suburbs of Chicago. So this is my team. I wanted to grow up and cover them or work for them, be a part of the organization. I was one of those people that wrote an article that Kyle Beach was a bust, and I called him a bum, and I was disappointed, and I'm so glad that article doesn't exist anymore. But when you look back, I feel awful, super awful, because I didn't know. I mean, I didn't have access, so there was no way for me to even talk to him. But still, I can't imagine how I feel, and that Jonathan Toews, who is the captain, does not feel that level, or has at least portrayed that level of guilt. Because I just, as a fan, so I'm taking off my hockey beat reporter hat for a second, and as a fan, it's really disappointing that the captain that led us to our first championship in so many years, and that was provided so many amazing memories, that's marred to begin with now. But he heard things, and he didn't follow up. He didn't check in with him. He didn't make sure he was okay. There needs to be a better standard for captain then. And if he's not even acknowledging that now, that's still an issue. Why does he still have the C? Alex DeBrincat was 12 years old when this happened, and he had more remorse and more eloquent things to say about the situation, and did not stick up for Stan Bowman one bit.
No, and that, I don't know if it, and this is not going to, it may sound defensive of Taze. I don't want it to sound that way, so if it does, I apologize. Taze came up in a different time, which is really a stupid excuse for saying that you just weren't raised right. I get it, but it's called growth.
Right.
I mean, I came up at the same time as Taze. Like Chris, without outing his age, came up in a very different time as Taze.
Slightly.
I'm pretty sure we have growth. Like, am I going to say back when I was 15, 16, I didn't say and do some really, really borderline ignorant, stupid shit? No, because I know I did. And I would hope I've become a better person as I've grown, but I don't care. 22 years old is not a kid, which is what Taze was. You're not. I don't care what people want to say. Oh, he's a 22-year-old kid. No. You should be able to know right from wrong when you see something like this. Just because the guy signs your checks or just because he's in this power position, I don't want to hear it. I've never liked that. Well, they don't want to. They're scared. Granted, I've never been in a position to step up and say. Just thankfully, I guess. But I would hope that no matter what the position is, I'd have the moral or the dignity or ethical mindset to do it and step up and say it. But yeah, the Brincat, like he sounded like a guy who's like, this is effed up. Like this is completely wrong. And the Pat Kane, I don't even want to hear Pat Kane talk about any of this. He's the last person anybody should talk about because he's got his own past, and I had to cover it back when we all worked together, myself, Elaine, and Chris at a different outlet. And I was at all these press conferences and I was at all these police. Like I don't want to hear from him. Anything he says should go on deaf ears.
So what do you think? I'm gonna ask you a question then, Mike. What do you think about the response from Duncan Keith when he was asked about it?
Oh.
I would say I don't want to get demonetized, but I don't think we're monetized on platforms yet. I don't want to get muted. I get he's feeling remorse, like the whole I should have agreed to be interviewed, but that to me says you are hiding something. What was he hiding? That's what I think bothered me the most. Is I feel like there's something he's not saying, so he needs to come out and say it. That I think is bothering me. I think that bothers me more than the people who were investigated or talked about, like the Cheveldayoff stuff, how he's still employed. If they didn't find anything and he legit is telling the truth, then yeah, you should. If he is legitimately telling the truth of whatever he said to the league and they find, okay, then yeah, you should still have a job. The Duncan Keith thing bothers me, I think, a bit more solely because by not agreeing to be interviewed, that makes me think that you have something to hide or you're protecting somebody or there's also that odd chance you're being like blackmailed or something, but I feel like that would come up in the event. Like that's something you say too.
Yeah, exactly, right? You would say that. I mean, look, I think one of the best guys looking out, like one of the guys I've heard the most from in this thing is Brent Sopel. This guy's been so honest and open about everything, like any hit he's done. Seems like, he was on, I don't know if he was on top of everything, but he heard a lot of stuff and he's been really honest about it, and I've liked what I've heard from him. Elaine, I don't know if you've heard anything from him, like if you've listened to his stuff.
Oh yeah,
he's done really
he's
well.
been super. I feel like it's been super genuine and honest, and he's been on it since like the civil litigation was put into play. He has not stopped. Like he was like, yeah, let's go on the record. Let's talk about it. Him and Nick Boynton. And so when you hear those two names say they knew, you cannot honestly tell me that there were more players that didn't know, because that team was close. Like people will say it, that was like a frat house. They like drank that whole season together. They were always around each other, even the next season. I mean, there's a reason why they won 3 Stanley Cups in such a short amount of time, because they were all super close. So it's not like things weren't flying around, and if those two knew it, there's no way in my mind that I can honestly believe that other members of that team didn't know more, or at least knew about the people that were making fun of him during training camp.
Agreed. Everybody knew. Like to me, in that organization with how that was, there's no doubt in my mind everybody knew.
Yeah.
except maybe like the lower level, lower tier players who were just camp bodies, like at training camp.
Yeah.
Maybe they didn't know. Like, I'm not
Or
going
I
to go
just
and
was
blanket,
passed
but
around.
everyone on the main NHL roster that was a main part of that team knew.
Now,
I think.
have we heard anything? Has Patrick Sharp have said anything about this?
I was going to ask that. I haven't heard anything. Like, he's got an opinion about so many things when he's on television, and he has nothing to say about this.
Like, I'm curious because he was a pretty prominent player on 3 Stanley Cups for that team, and he was a vital member of that 2010 team, if I remember correctly. I know he's doing his gig, I think now. I know he's got a new gig, and I know he's working up at UVM, helping out the same role Babcock had. So, you know, if a Vermont reporter catches him up there, somebody should ask him about that, because I'm curious to hear what he has to say about that, because if you say the team was as close as they said they are, then that's a guy who's pretty honest and open about things, especially when he's on TV.
Agreed. Agree 100%. And then I do want to transition to the NHL's response to this.
The horrible response to this.
Yeah, we'll call this a $2 million fine, and they defended it. That Babcock press. We'll get to the Babcock. We'll get to the Babcock press from a couple days ago or whatever in a minute. We'll go back to the original announcement of the fine. That bothered me so much because, and I talked about it at the top of the show, when the Devils were fined for the Ilya Kovalchuk circumvention, it was $3 million, a first-round pick over a 4-year span, and then a third-round pick. They ended up getting that first-round pick back.
Now, here's the kicker with this. Remember, they were fined for trying to circumvent the cap. That's
different scenarios.
And then we found out that the NHL screwed up and withheld vital information.
But this and what happened to Kyle is a million times worse than they messed with some money to get the player in. Like, who gives a shit about that? Like, fucking sorry, $2 million.
I mean,
I get Quenneville out, but that took people having a shitstorm, rightfully so, of him coaching that day behind the bench in Florida. Right. Stan Bowman out. Okay, maybe to save face. No, this is where I said I was going to go on my rant here. I am of the mindset, and this might be harsh, but I don't care. Owners should be forced to sell the team because if the NBA got Don Sterling out of the league, the Blackhawks need to be sold. They should be fined a ton of money, lose draft capital, multiple years of first-round picks. It's not even close as to what I think should be done. But the biggest thing is they need new ownership. They should be forced to sell and not necessarily make a profit on it, too. They should be forced to sell with 50% of that revenue going to some sort of foundation, at that sell price. I am... And I get there's legalities and litigation that would have to come into play for that to happen. But that is the borderline base of what I'm trying to punish. Not, we gave him $2 million. $2 million is next to nothing.
Yeah.
I'll give you $20. That's $2 million to me.
I will say this. I heard somebody say it really eloquently. It doesn't matter what the money amount was. Somebody was going to have a problem with it anyway. Mm-hmm. Because you can't put a price tag on this stuff.
100%. I can agree with that.
It wouldn't have mattered if it was $10 million, $20 million. It wouldn't have mattered. I think I think the right people left in this situation. The right people had to go. Now, as far as ownership, that's your opinion. I genuinely believe the Wirtz family on that press conference, they took ownership that their organization messed up big time. They know it. Did they know? You would think they would have known.
Right. It's a sad state of affairs that they wouldn't.
It's not a multi-billion-dollar organization. It's not like it's IBM or it's not like it's EA. It's not like it's General Motors. It is an NHL franchise. If you're the owner of that organization, I refuse to believe they didn't.
But
Mike,
if they didn't, though, they need to, in the future, have a better pulse on what's happening. Because also, it's like good business, right? Like,
100%.
you need to know what's going on in your business. And if you don't know what's going on, and this has been under the rug for like 11 years, then that's bad business, because there's no way that you can spin it to be positive. I'm not saying that anything should be spun or framed to be positive, but there's really no way to rectify the situation that's super meaningful other than completely dismantling and restarting. And to me, like, my dad and I discussed this a few months ago when all of this process was starting for their internal investigation. You know, maybe it is time for Taze or Kane to go. Do they deserve to have that much talent on the team right now? And I know that sounds like a weird thing to say, but they were also there, and they were leadership, and they're still there, and they're still leadership. So do they need to be there still? And do they need to be in that role? And that's something that I think needs to seriously be discussed. And if they feel like they responded properly, then they clearly need to go through some sort of training or counseling to understand that what happened back then wasn't okay. Same thing with Cheveldayoff. Like, he was saying, I wasn't knocking on the door every day to make sure everything was okay. Well, you didn't follow up at all, not even once. You know, you're in a power position, and this guy is essentially, at the time, was a bubble player in the AHL, NHL. And in that power position, you have a responsibility to follow up. So the question is, did you not follow up? And then, are you following up on things now as a GM? Has he grown as a GM? We really don't know, because in his press conference today, we didn't get that answer. People were going to ask those questions. There was limited availability. We don't know. And that's why, to me, it's like, okay, it's in that weird gray area if he should keep his job, but also he will likely be under investigation with what happened with Bill Peters and Akeem Alou. So does he deserve to keep saying, my hands are clean every single time? Because then that means you shouldn't be in a position of leadership. That's my opinion.
I agree. Like, I don't think it's weird. Like, I'm of a mindset, and this is going to come as like people in glass house shouldn't throw stones type of thing. I am a one strike and you're out type of person, depending on the severity. Certain things require no second chances. And if you are involved in any which way, like, silence is just as bad as being an assaulter, if you know. And there's so many people that we don't know. Like, Kyle brought up a good point. To be fair, he says to the owners, it seems like the executives went out of their way to make sure ownership didn't know. Those executives, anybody who did that, if that was be the case, should never work in any sort of management position again, and they should be stocking shelves at Target overnight for the rest of their goddamn lives.
I mean, I don't trust them at my Target either. You know, I like quality stocking. Okay, and I feel
then they can go to Walmart.
No, but Elaine brings up a great point, because, you know, it's funny. Speaking with other outlets, Chris has probably heard me on Mike Richards up in Canada. Mike brought up the equivalent to the Penn State, what happened with Penn State, and the sanctions that were handed out to Penn State. Ultimately, certain things were given back because of investigation actually, you know, went a certain way, but they were sanctioned, they were fined, they were, you know, they had to rebuild that program. And I agree. I think, you know, a little bit more should have come out of this.
If you're gonna, yeah, like, but that's the thing. Like, you had made a very good point. I'm sorry to interrupt. They gave things back based on what they found later on.
Right.
I'd be okay with that if they find something, but to give them just a simple monetary chump change thing, like, yeah, the sanctions, like, it just comes down to, like, you need to hit them. Like, you need to give the equivalent to me of what would equate to the NHL, I guess, version of a death penalty. You just strip them of like a decade worth of first round picks, and then as things come out, okay, we'll give you one here or there, maybe.
And more people's names need to be X'd off of that cup, in my opinion, because you know what,
100%.
I don't think Kyle Beach's name is on that cup because he was a Black Ace, and I don't think he played enough games.
Yeah,
I don't think he's on that cup either.
You agreed?
Yeah.
Or I agree.
not.
I don't think so.
Yeah, so just for someone who that was literally one of the happiest days of my life when that happened. And now I hear Chelsea Dagger and I get a little sick to my stomach.
To be fair, it was never a good song.
No, it's an amazing song. But,
No.
but
It was always bad.
But I feel like more names should be X'd off then. From that year at least, because they prioritized the cup run over the mental health and well-being of a player.
And I'm tired of that. I'm tired, and we know how sports are. We know how sports have always been this whole machismo bullshit and the whole mental health thing of like, well, suck it up, Buttercup. You're being paid money to do this, blah, blah, blah. You're an athlete. No, I don't want to hear that anymore. I didn't want to hear it then. I don't want to hear it now. I know you're in the same boat.
Yeah. And I know I said this kind of earlier about the AHL, but I think that because the two work so closely together, if something like this were to happen and the Blackhawks truly were investigating it, they should have given the GM of that team, because it was not Cheveldayoff at the time, they should have given him a heads up of what was going on so that when he got his player back, he knew. But also that coach at the time put in his review for the next season that it seemed like things that happened between either for, I can't remember if it was the Black Ace or if it was for Kyle Beach, but that the incident of what happened with Brad Aldrich affected he thinks that it affected how they were playing. So if that's ending up in a review, why isn't someone at the AHL level approaching the NHL level and going, what's going on? Did this get taken care of? Because our player isn't playing well. And I feel like that's a valid question to ask since they work so well together. I don't know what you guys think.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird because, I mean, even if you listen to Kyle Beach's whole interview, he referred to a lot of things as far as Chicago as it was their this, it was their that. He didn't feel any bit a part of that team even then, even before the assault happened and the subsequent of everything else. Right. And that has to be kept in mind. Now,
right. That's something that happens with a lot of Black Aces. It's kind of like the taxi squad last season. A lot of players were like in that limbo world when you ask them, you know, who do you play for? Or what was it like to be up top with the, like, say, we'll just use the example of the Monsters in the Jacket. Say, like, what was like being up there? It was like, it was like in limbo. Like when I asked Matisse Kafunix about it, he said it was like being in limbo. You never knew which way you were going that day. Like that's exactly what it's like to be a Black Ace. So do you have any sort of representation or protection or safe space or someone to go to if you're in that, if you feel like you're in that bubble, in that like middle area, and they need to have someone.
And I think this whole thing, and I don't know why I have auto playing sounds going on. There was one statement Gary Bettman said when defending this punishment or lack thereof. Quote, while it may have optically been not the best look, no duh, I was more concerned with the substance than the look. The problem with that is there has to be substance to this. The only substance is the investigation and what came out of it. There's no substance like into repercussions. Like there needs to be, to me, there needs to be charges. Like that's a whole nother thing. Like there needs to be, in my mind, criminal charges going here. Like I don't want to hear, oh, what happened 10 years ago, statute. No, I as someone, and I know, I guarantee we all know someone who has had to deal or has been a victim of something like this, or we know stories. There should be no such thing in my mind. And this is getting into a gray area with some people, as a statute of limitations on any sort of assault like these, because you don't know how that person is going to react to it happening to them. The best thing for some people is to shutter it and never bring it up again in order to move on with their lives and still be here. Others will go right away. Like everybody reacts and differently to all this. And to me, like charges, the criminal charges need to come out of this. And until they do, until things, there's a lot more repercussions that need to happen before I think
This
there's
is
any
far
sort of
from
closure.
over.
No, and it shouldn't be.
It shouldn't be. I mean, look, listen to Gary, what he said. I mean, it doesn't surprise me the way what came out of what he said. I mean, if anybody expected anything different, shame on them, because then you're not been paying attention. I'm sorry, Elaine. I didn't really want to phrase it like that to you. I'm sorry. I should.
No, it's what was shocking to me. I mean, we all knew Gary Bettman was a little like, I don't even know proper words to say that won't make me sound like a douchebag. So just think of some of the worst things you could say, and that's.
We were talking about it off air about what we would like to do to Gary Bettman.
The lawyer was coming up with lawyer things to say, basically.
Exactly. The lawyer was.
My thing is, like, I wasn't shocked about that stuff. I was shocked about the way I know not everyone had access to the video, but I did, because I didn't get to be in it, but I was able to watch it. He had like sighs and rolling of his eyes, and like his whole demeanor was so condescending. And then for him to clap back at Mark Lazarus, who wasn't even covering the Blackhawks during that specific time, it was like super wrong. Like, you're not taking accountability, and now you're trying to tell Mark Lazarus that, like, maybe
who was a great reporter, by the way.
Yes. And then you don't let Rick Westhead ask questions until like 46 minutes in. And I wasn't expecting that. I felt like if the NHL truly wanted to make a difference, they would have let Rick Westhead either do one-on-one only him having access.
Oh, that would have been incredible to watch.
Because he had access to Kyle Beach one-on-one. That would have been an incredible follow-up. Or they could have let him go first and ask like 6 questions.
Yeah, and I guarantee you, like them pointing out I would have been if I was any reporter, but I guarantee this is how the NHL would have done it. Oh yeah, I have a question. Can Rick ask a question? Next question. I have a question. Can Rick ask a question?
Well, that's how Pierre got him in, because Pierre LeBrun at TSN is like, hey, well, my colleague's been waiting for a long time. But then Pierre asked his own question so Rick could get on too. But the thing is, it's typical, but that's typical. Like, I watched the whole thing. I was not surprised by the way Gary came off.
No, it's hard to be surprised. It's just one of those, like Kyle makes a good point here, something that bothered, I think it bothers all of us too, is that he won't commit to helping John Doe 2 because there's not enough information.
Right, but in his statements, though, he said that he wanted to make sure, hold on, I'm going to find this. He wanted to make sure to create a network for those organizations to be made available to the hockey community, and that they are doing this so that wherever you may be in the hockey ecosystem, minor league, pro, major, junior, college, amateur, youth, minor hockey, male or female, we think it's important that everyone has an outlet for help. But what Gary Bettman went was everyone but John Doe 2, and that's super disappointing.
Especially because I'm not going to say one's worse than the other, but the optics to a lot of people, one was a minor.
Right.
The optics to the outside person or person just like casually reading, like, oh, one was an adult, one was a minor. Like the casual person or basic person will go minor, way more severe. For me, it's all severe. But like when I hear that, like, again, he came off as condescending, which he always comes off as condescending because I don't believe a word that ever comes out of his mouth. I don't think anybody ever has. But like, yeah, the whole not enough information for John Doe 2, who was I think 15, 16, whatever he was. Doesn't matter. Like it's just disgusting. Like it bothers me. I'm at the point where he also should be removed. I know there's a lot of rumblings behind the scenes, and I'm pretty sure Chris can verify this, from ownership groups and from owners that there needs to be a change. Because at the end of the day, Bettman works for the 32 owners. At the end of the day, that's what a sports league commissioner does.
But it's just it's just 8 owners that have to say they want him, and they need to change that because that's 20%. Can I do math? Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
enough.
you have to have three. You have to have
25%.
You have to have 3/4 plus 1 to get him out.
Yeah.
Yeah, and but the thing is, will this be what it takes? Because it's not like, sure, they got they got their NHL deals, they got their TV deals, so that's out of the way. And this is just coming from the mind of the owners. If there was a television negotiation coming up, I guarantee you, none of this, they wouldn't even question the idea. They'd be like, no, we're not getting rid of Bettman.
Right.
They got their TV deals for the next 7 years. That gives more than enough time to get a new commissioner in, spun up, ready for that next big deal. And the CBA,
the CBA is done.
So in reality, this is the moment that you go, he's the only commissioner in the history of this league. He's been in place for 31 damn years. This is as big I don't care. This is worse, and how he's responded to this and how the league has responded to this is worse than any lockout. It's worse than any cap circumvention attempt. It's worse than anything they could have done.
I think a lot of things in the past, 5 years that have come to light has just marred anything positive that he may have done at any point, because it's just consistently one thing after another, from CTE to the way that, pain is dealt with, and to this, it's not getting better. And every time he's just deny CTE, and they don't put proper programs in place that allow players to not get addicted to pain medicine. And I mean, for God's sakes, Max Domi is playing. He was playing with a fractured rib still, and saying pain is for the weak or something like that. I don't remember, but that's not the mentality they need right now, because look at what has happened to some players that are beloved by the fans. They might not have been the best players, but maybe they would have been better if they had not gotten addicted to pain pills that were constantly prescribed to them. So there's constantly issues not getting better.
Well, I mean, Mike, you and I both follow a certain fake sport.
Whatever could that be? What are you trying to say?
Oh, we were talking about that earlier.
Gary Bettman is the ultimate heel. He is a heel. He's a bad guy. That's what he is. He's the villain. He embraces it. And to say it's right or wrong, you can have an opinion on it.
The difference to me is that this is I get you want to embrace being certain commissioners before all this. I'm okay if you're you know what? People hate me. Let them hate me. It's when you get to a point where something as severe as this, you got to try and you have to put a forward where it's this is me talking as a human, as a person. Forget I'm a damn lawyer. Forget I'm the commissioner of the NHL. Forget I'm this in this power. This is something that will not be tolerated. This is something. Imagine, and people, I hate when people do this, but I'm going to do it anyway, because I'm going to be hypocritical with it. Imagine if it was your goddamn family member, or your kid, or your son, or your brother, your sister. I don't care. Imagine if it was someone in your family. The people who said, "Oh, just get over it," would not be saying that if their son came home and said, "Mom, Dad, something happened to me." No one in today, I mean, I'm not going to say no one, because there are still some terrible, terrible people in this world. But I'd hope the average person wouldn't go, "Buck up, buddy. That's how it is in sports land."
I don't think that would happen. But
They're
I will
also
say
disconnected from the average person as well. So the possibility is still there that they would be that way. I mean, these top executives are so disconnected from the fans, from the media, from the average person, that they literally, because it's the same people over and over, and they just recycle people. It's just people constantly saying, yeah, no, you're right. And there's nobody in there, in that area, who are questioning them and saying, maybe you're wrong. And now for there to be pushback by owners, that's a huge thing, because have we really even heard about that before to this extent?
Yeah, going into Chris can probably verify the same thing I heard. going into the CBA negotiations before they returned to play, there was a lot of rumblings that owners were unhappy with the way Gary Bettman had handled the CBA negotiations, but after that didn't really get traction because they made him too much money.
This is always the case, right?
The
Which
money,
is always
yeah.
the case. It's the money. But Gary, the thing is, like, watching that and seeing his responses, it just comes off to me that it does. And I don't want to like put this in a way where it's like demeaning to people or anything. I don't really want to come off like that. And if I apologize if I do, he doesn't care what anybody thinks, and he never has. And that's an issue.
That comes to the being decentralized that Elaine said, brought up. Like, you don't care. Like, yeah, you don't care about the peasants and the little people. You don't. You care about this almighty dollar more than. And again, none of us have been in that position.
About the almighty dollar too, like people in Manhattan wouldn't be blacked out of like 6 teams.
Right. I found out the other day that I'm blacked out from Boston Bruins games in Buffalo.
No, I can't.
But
yeah, it's Gary. But I mean, everybody's pointing the finger at Gary. I mean,
it's not just Gary. Donald
it's
Fair.
everyone.
Well, I was just gonna say, what about the PA? I mean, look,
that's even worse to me because it's their job to protect the players, and they're just laying a massive dump this season.
8 hours they met on Monday night. For those who don't know, they met for 8+ hours. Not once was Fair's future as head of the PA brought up. Well, it was to discuss the investigation of the Kyle Beach matter. That pissed me off, just the sound. Like, not a matter. The Kyle Beach sexual assault. Call it what it goddamn is. Mm-hmm. Like, and I know we were going to get into the Penguins thing. I don't think we're going to have time today.
No.
Plus, next week, I have a feeling we'll talk about that next week. This is, like, again, it feels really weird. Like, I don't feel comfortable talking about the ins and outs of regular hockey right now.
Right.
I feel like I got to shower. I'm just going to take a shower after we get off the air anyway in 10 minutes. Like, I feel dirty.
I mean, to be fair to Fear, though, I mean, not to defend him, and I'm not trying to, but if you look at the timeline of everything, he didn't come in to December. This happened to April, right, of 2010? But he did have conversations about it.
Yes.
Things did get to him. So he might have still been in the position, but he definitely needed to do something, or somebody else with the PA needed to step in.
Right.
And that's the thing, like, one of them.
Who was the PA rep at that time? Was it Jonathan Tace, though?
One of the things, like Frank Cervelli talked about it last night. Punishment
right
against Dr. Brian Shaw, the NHLPA's therapist. He knew he should be outed, failure to report. Like, there are so many things wrong. The PA is there to protect, defend the players, like you talked about. And they failed. They failed Kyle Beach in every single way there could have been.
I mean, I think that NHLPA in general just needs a revamp as well. I mean, look what they're doing. I mean, we talked about it before. Like, look what they're not even really defending Jack Eichel, and like there's so many things other than money that they could be working with players on, and the only thing we ever hear about is like escrow and money and all this. And yes, money's important. Totally get it. But also, players are, even if you look at it from a non-human perspective, the way the NHLPA and their teams are looking at a lot of their players is also like, you're not even protecting your investment.
No. And to me, Cervelli brought up a really good point talking about Fair and Brian Shaw. Given this is his point. Given what we already know, the impending investigation from the NHLPA is likely to yield anything new, which I agree. And he says it feels like more like window dressing to say, "Hey, look what we're doing." Because if people honestly don't have a recollection of what happened then or now about what happened then, they're not going to magically come up with it in 2 months or a month when they're being interviewed or invest about it. Like, it's just, at the end of the day, if you were in a position at the NHLPA, there's no way you weren't told about this. And if you weren't told about this, then that's a major failing of the PA, and the PA needs, like you said, needs to be completely overhauled. At the end of the day, the PA needs to be blown up after this too.
There just needs to be more conversation. There needs to be more communication, and there needs to be more accountability from top to bottom, and that includes the AHL teams as well. Everyone needs to be able to talk, to work through things together, to actually hold people account. Like I feel like there's like zero accountability in the NHL unless you're like a bad player.
Agreed. It's like every other sports league. They're going to protect the stars.
And it's
crazy.
crazy.
Off and on the ice.
Well, it's funny because, I hear this term being thrown around because, we came on talking about, I was talking about, the ratings in college football and NCAA, where all this stuff goes down. What's the one term they like to throw around? Institutional failure.
Yeah.
That's the one term they love throwing around. And you could say the same thing here. It was an institutional failure on everything. And it was wrong on all levels. Look, I've said it in a lot of spots. I never like to prejudge anybody on anything. Don't want to call for anybody's job. I'll say it. I'll reiterate what I said earlier. The right people left their positions. If there's more that need to come after we find out more information, then so be it. It's going to happen. Chris, Lane, obviously everybody, it's probably going to happen. The shovel day off thing, you know what, if he's really telling the truth, then okay, you got to let him, he's going to move on. But again, like you said, there's still more to find out with this other stuff that's going on with the Rockford stuff. So, I mean, look, it's going to definitely be an ongoing affair for many months to come. And I had definitely, Chris said it earlier, the way the Blackhawks were playing, you could clearly see it was affecting them on the ice as well.
Yeah.
And for me, and I've seen some fans tweet about this, and these are the types of sickos I can't stand. The ones like, well, now they can get this out of the way and start winning hockey games and blah, blah, blah. Screw your hockey games. I know you, Jim, like you don't want to call for people's jobs. I'm the exact opposite, clearly, based on what I've said.
Yeah.
I am a put your head on a pike and show it to the world as example of don't do this. And if that ever happens to me, then it happens to me and I reap what I sow, I guess. But I'd hope I'm a good person, and I don't think I've ever done anything. I know I've never done anything because I'm a homebody introvert who just sits on I'm a keyboard warrior. But I just don't. This isn't going away anytime soon. People thought maybe with this being out that it was going to. I guarantee if Kyle Beach never came out, if he never came out and said anything, this might have been able to been swept under the rug a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But the second he put his name to this, that opened up a whole can of, well, now we know who we're coming to defend.
And he also, I think it was good of him, though, to come out because his name was already getting out. Like, I knew who it was 2 weeks before this because people were talking. And unfortunately, people can't leave things alone. And when they read the report, they're like, let's go to the roster back then and let's see who it was. And the speculation was awful. Like, he's John Doe for a reason. Like, he should have had his space in that and his time and place to deal with it. And luckily he felt comfortable enough and felt that Rick Westhead was his safe space to say that it was him. And you're right. If he didn't come out, it probably would have been swept under the rug. Like, well, it's very he said, she said kind of manner, but
exactly. And I don't like it. I don't like it. And we're going to wrap up here. I want to get everybody's closing thoughts on whatever you want. Opinion on this, opinion on just the matters at hand, sexual assault, whatever. We'll start with you, Jim, and then we'll work around. What do you want to say, or what would you like to say about this? And we know this is going to be brought up weekly, I bet, for the rest of the year. Like, it's going to be a carryover, this and then what we'll talk about next week with Pittsburgh. But what would you like to say?
All right. So, having time to digest this and seeing everything on Twitter and everything, I don't want the conversation to go away. I want to make things go moving in the right direction. Everybody can say all the right things, how they're going to do this, this, and this. Let's see it implemented so it doesn't happen again.
Chris?
Yeah, to add on to what Jim said, this can never happen again like this. Ever. Period. I mean, I'll go so far to say is Taves and Kane should have been immediately suspended. I'll even go further to say that last year's absence was not a medical condition. They knew something. There's something that does not add up to what happened last year, that Jonathan Taves was kept out, and that this came out like right as training. Something doesn't add up, and there's still, unfortunately, a lot of things in this whole entire situation that do not add up. That is very troubling going forward, and it's not something that's going to go away overnight. And I hope to God it does not.
Lane?
I hope that the media looks at this and realizes that we have to ask the tougher questions all the time, and that, it's not worth keeping your credentials if you're gonna, lose your soul in the process by not asking what needs to be asked. And I feel like this week was a good step forward in that for media. The way that the media kept coming heavy at Bettman asking about shovel day off, they weren't going to let it go because they didn't think his answers were appropriate, and they were just going to keep asking, and good for them. But we need to keep doing this going forward. We obviously can't let it monopolize all of our coverage, but it needs to be heavily in our coverage. We can't act like hockey is not toxic right now. We have to acknowledge that things are changing. Yes, definitely. There's definitely a change. You can see it amongst the players, especially the younger ones. But we have to continue to hold teams accountable. I mean, and also keep as much of our opinion out of it as possible, so that those who like to be stands for those who are bad people can't really sit there and say that they can try all they want and say that you are pushing a narrative, but if you're just stating the facts.
No, and this is why when it comes to our opinions, that's why we have shows like this. But I'm going to piggyback on the media. I hope we hit a time where more and more people start to realize media is not PR. We are there. We've all been doing this for some time. This is not public relations. This is to get the facts, the who, what, when, where, why, and tell people what's going on. I hope that we are hitting a point, and I know we started, but I hope we really get this into hyperspeed where this machismo, toxic masculinity culture, and people hate the term. I kind of don't like it, but it is what it is. You call a spade a spade. Toxic masculinity dies in sports. Sports need to be for people, not this machine anymore that you playing hurt is one thing, but keep things to yourself. If something happens to you, shut up about it. No, if something happens to anybody, whether you're listening or not, there's always someone willing to listen. Always go out and tell your story, and do it anonymously if you have to. If you have to do it anonymously because it makes you feel better or makes you more comfortable, then do it. There are always people willing to listen. There's always places you can report it. So we're going to wrap up. It hasn't been, I'm not going to say this has been a fun show. No. It hasn't. No. I don't think next week's going to be a fun show. Elaine, I'd love to have you back too for more because when I told Chris that you were coming on, when I told Chris you were coming on, his excitement, I could measure it through like the message. And then it's like, but then you think about, well, shit. Hopefully down the line when we have we can have fun.
Right.
But
one day.
Someday.
Yeah.
Someday soon.
Really quick though, Jim, I know that you you've been apologizing and saying I don't want to like sound this way or like I don't want to play devil's advocate essentially. Sometimes it's good to do that so that we can all have a legitimate discussion where it's not so one-sided, and then it can help people decide, is my point actually, is it legit? And people that challenge us, like even the people that were in my dumpster fire of mentions in my DMs for a while, they challenged me to be better, to be a better reporter. I don't like the way they went about it, but but to have that different point of view allows us to be stronger in what we believe and the right thing. So don't apologize for that.
No, I mean, I just try to judge everything on the facts and try to, try not to I don't want to come off like saying, I don't want to let the blue like checkmark brigade, the mob try to influence my decision because I try to break down things. And if there's certain things I know, I'm going to try to research it. Like with this whole thing, there's a lot of stuff I don't know about. I'm only seeing bits and pieces and I haven't read the full report. I've only heard what I've said. And there's certain things I need to read up on. But like I said, I don't like prejudging people before I know the facts. And I understand a lot of people do that. But I guess that's because I was raised a certain way and, my religion is a big part of me. So, that's probably plays a factor into it. But, again, I just try not to, I don't want to try to ruffle too many feathers, but on certain things I like to. When it comes to certain opinions, but I appreciate it, what you said and everything. And I, certain things I will challenge, especially if, facts are not brought, if their facts are being turned in a certain way, or it's just an opinion, not based on anything.
And you can follow Elaine on Twitter at I'm a Rain Dancer, Jim at Jim Biringer, and Chris at Chris Wassel DFS. Mine's right on the screen, Mike Straw Media. Until next week, we will be back same time, same place, 8 p.m. Make sure you are following us on Twitch as we get ready to relaunch that platform, and subscribe to us on YouTube. Till next time, take care. Treat everyone well. That's all I'm going to say. Is just treat people well.